Hey, hardscape pros, get ready to turn adversity into opportunity in 2024 with the Hardscaper Showcase events. Discover cutting-edge tools, new construction techniques, and must-have products that will set you apart from the competition. This year, we're diving deep into pool projects, unlocking secrets to flawless coping installations, addressing drainage challenges, and maximizing value for your clients. You'll also learn how to elevate your outdoor kitchen game. We're talking about streamlining builds, creating multifunctional spaces, and impressing clients with innovative concepts. Finally, we'll show you how to stay ahead of the curve with the latest design trends. Explore new color combos, patterns, and layout strategies that will leave your clients speechless. Don't miss out on the Hardscaper Showcase events, empowering hardscape professionals to thrive in 2024. Visit events.hardscaper.com and sign up today. Today we're going to have two special guests. They're from Creative by Nature, which was just on the screen I was pointing at. Johnathan and Dan Connor, they're the co-founders. Pretty cool business that they've built that we're going to talk about. They basically do design and consulting for hardscape and outdoor living spaces businesses out of Seattle, Washington. They flew in for the summit this week, and I figured why not get them on the stage and talk about how they're seeing businesses growing and thriving even in this tougher economy. So I'd like you to welcome to the stage Johnathan and Connor. You're listening to Hardscape Growth, a podcast for hungry professionals who want to grow their businesses and level up. Okay, so welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Why don't we start with what the heck Creative by Nature is, because it's kind of a very different type of business, and you guys market yourselves as innovation partners for contractors. So what does that really mean?
Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking about that question and looking, at our tag here, and even though we are showing up as a designer on the innovation side, I think we really realize it takes a lot more than design to innovate any company. You got to be able to storytell, you have to sell, you have to market, you have to understand processes, and then going all the way to transitioning to a build that's not just about getting a big build, it's about being efficient with the build financially and time-wise.
And Johnathan, you're from the tech startup world, so very different from what we do. Well, there's a lot of similarities, which we'll get into, but at its base, at its core, very different. And Dan, you're from the contracting world, right?
Exactly,
so
yeah.
What were you doing prior to this?
Yeah, so I kind of started in the field just like everybody else here, regardless if it's an owner-operator or running a successful design-build company. But I started over in Connecticut, so New England area. Really, again, just building off the field experiences and understanding installation methods and just really soaking up everything, especially like Techo Block was educating about. I just soaked it up and then just moved my way up through the industry into a foreman role, then into a project management role. And that's kind of where I settled to fully understand, okay, now that I'm a project manager, what does that entail? What are the differences between sales, design, and how does that all operate together? And I've seen companies at the $500,000 level, but I've also seen companies at the $300 to $400 million level. So, being able to see how all of that operates, what does it mean? How do we all function together and be efficient in this industry was something that I've able to just express with a company like Creative by Nature.
Cool. And Johnathan, what does a role in a startup tech world really mean? What was your day-to-day?
It's living with chaos, throwing yourself in the fire, and I think that essentially is what we brought into this industry. The big difference about this tech world that I was a part of was seeing companies go from year 0 to 5 million and 5 to about $30 million companies. That's kind of the world that I was in for software and tech. And what I saw both in that industry as well as this industry is whether you're hitting and striving for 3 million or 30 million, I've also seen some of those certain moves that are done at the wrong time or at the wrong speed or with the wrong people completely collapse. And so I was in a world of seeing things collapse, figuring it out in the moment, and that's what I wanted to bring here with Creative by Nature and the team.
So is it wrong to say that kind of what you guys are doing is helping businesses optimize what's running now and putting them in a position to scale their business for the future?
Absolutely, yeah. There's a lot of contractors that are out there today, and we understand for our designs, though it does benefit the contractor and the homeowner, where we really shine is how do we use our designs as a vehicle for brands and manufacturers. And when we get to bring that into this world, and seeing, again, those disruptions. That's what we wanted to bring into this.
So what does that mean exactly? Like for everybody sitting here in the audience, how are you relevant to their day-to-day?
Yeah, I think from a couple of principles that are really key, it really stems around, and this is a saying that I even got from Paver Pete as he was talking about making sure you're marking with accuracy before you deliver the cut. And I think that that is something that sometimes as you are seeking certain goals, financial goals, growth goals, there's a momentum that sometimes you take on, and that can sometimes take you to the end point. And so one of the things I always like to say in preface is you got to go slow to go fast. And when you're ready to make the execution, the speed really matters, how you execute. That's something that we really had to do, not just in tech world, but now I look at this industry as well, is every single contractor that we worked with, anytime we didn't sell something and close a deal and service a client, we actually spent a lot of time in this uncomfortable zone of understanding what went wrong. And I think a lot of times we're just chasing the things that are right, the things that are big, the things that are shiny. From startup world, it's focusing on those areas of opportunity, not just the opportunity you're seizing. And so that was a practice that I think we brought into this industry as well. It helps.
Being selective with what you're focusing on. And
yeah,
you know, I was talking with someone out in the campground area during the break, and he said something similar. It's like, go slow is smooth, and smooth is fast.
Smooth is far, yeah, or smooth is fast. Yep, I love it.
So I like it. So how is that kind of stuff relevant in the current climate? Like a lot of businesses have seen their revenues kind of plateau in the last 6, 12, 18 months, maybe even start declining a little bit just because the market is still significantly stronger than it was 5 years ago, but it's not as strong as it was 2 or 3 years ago. Absolutely. So how is what you're doing relevant to addressing that, I guess?
Yeah, and I think it really starts to bucket itself based, everybody has, again, different outside pressures. People are stretching for different goals, but if you start to look and segment, one of the things that we did for companies that were just striving about that 500,000 to maybe 800,000, it wasn't so much in finding the systems, it's really sitting and breaking everything down at a tangible level. So understanding what went wrong, do we not storytell our value all the way? Are there opportunities to go back? I think one of the opportunities that I would do if I was a contractor here is some of this knowledge that we're getting around stormwater and permeability is to almost go back to some of those clients and say, hey, I know you were considering a retaining wall or this patio. These are some things I really want to make sure I implement if you give us that opportunity. And so those are the pieces that I think if you bring that into your process and you really live in almost a state of post-mortem, is looking at the things that didn't go well and really living in that first. I think a lot of people sometimes when they then go from kind of your $500,000 to 1.5, 3 million, they get really excited about systems. And I've actually seen systems slow processes down. I've seen it become very disjointed where people don't even want to assume these new softwares. And so it's really making sure you understand, if I twist this knob, water comes out of the spout. If you understand exactly what you want to control, that's when I would say then it's time to start looking into systems and understanding that.
What would be like an example of something you just said, like where the systems are slowing you down? Like you're doing them with the best of intentions, but it's compromising the ability of the company to deliver the results that you're trying to get.
I would go back to design. I think at its core, we support these contractors and builders and brands with our designs, but I've seen that not only can designs help 3x, 4x any sort of job opportunity, what I've actually seen is it can almost 5, 6, 7x the time to close.
Okay.
That's not efficient. When I think about designs and how people as design firms try to support contractors, I don't necessarily think that they're going all the way to make the life better for the contractor. And so one of the things that we did is setting super clear expectations. As we go from kind of your B to C, your business to consumer, your homeowners, 40K projects, as you start to scale up, what we notice is as we start doing $250,000 to $400,000 projects out in Seattle with the local builder, we realized people we're speaking to are completely different. I mean, these are executive level engineers. It truly starts to become almost a B2B sales, a business to business sales. A lot of that comes with visuals, setting expectations, being very clear contractually. And something that I've seen, if anybody here is really trying to go the next level when it comes to the types of builds and clientele you take on, is you've got to be comfortable saying, this is my part of the homework as a contractor, but there's also homework for you. When you start to reach a little bit higher, who does the homework and the speed at which they do it shows a lot of intentionality. And so that's how we started to go away from the quantity and starting to look at quality and scaling up.
Yeah. So like you're talking about the homework I give to the client, what's really appropriate? Because if we're not talking about projects that are $20,000, $30,000. We're talking about how do we get to the projects that are $100,000, $150,000, $200,000, $300,000. Yeah. What's an appropriate level of homework to assign to the client that ensures their buy-in, but also gives you the right information so that process that you're mentioning, that design process, you're not dragging it out? Because I think the speed to the close of the sale is something that everybody here is seeing. It's getting a lot longer because for the last 2-3 years, I just have to pick up the phone and say, yeah, I can do it. All right, cool. Whenever you can do it, I'll take it. But now people have options. Now people are shopping. So now people have a different expectation. So what do you need to do to control the situation to secure the best outcome for your company?
Yeah, I think, anytime you're prefacing this with a client or a homeowner, if you are prefacing expectations, it can sometimes feel a little like a dictatorship. One of the things that you have to do is really story tell the benefits that this brings them. Yeah. I really want to get you enjoying your space sooner. What we do is we don't just get the design, the blueprints, the GIS maps, the smart level readings. We don't just go to town on the design. I've seen contractors do that. I've also seen they go 15 revisions into any given design. A lot of times that starts to show the client, you didn't hear me. Yeah. And so one of the things that we do is we say, look, I want to just take 45 minutes with you. I'd love anybody else in the household to kind of come together. Let's all look at this together, show the family, the kids, they're going to be the ones playing out there. Let's get their feedback, make it very communal, and say that if I spend this 1 hour with you, I will say 95% of the time, we've gone from 15 revisions down to about 3. And at that point, we're already selecting materials for the contractor and saying, hey, Techo Block, this is exactly where you need to purchase it and where you need to go. But I think setting those expectations very far up front is like, I really want to get to know you so that this space is you. And sometimes we get in this speed of, again, templating, pushing things out really fast. And there's a segment for that. But I think if we're talking about scaling and growing, it's really getting to understand them. And that 1 hour will save you. I've seen, again, 15, 16, 17 hours, not only of virtual calls and Zoom calls to realign with the client, it's all the design time, all the erasing that you do. And so that's when I see designs can either be truly a strong tool, but the way it's positioned today for contractors, I think it almost disrupts their flow. And that's where sometimes they just say, you know what, I'm not even going to do design. It slows down my time to close. It slows down going into change orders. Hey, you guys designed something. I can't source this. This wasn't the right specs. I've seen walls get built and we're like, there's no way we could ever build this wall without now severely going through permitting. Those are expectations we want to set way up front.
That's one of the things that I don't know about you guys, but I've seen it a lot where you outsource the designs, but the designs are not realistic. So you're setting the client up for something, and like you said, you end up with all these change orders. Like there's a grade change of 6 inches across here. I need to build a step. I can't slope this, or I can't just end the pavement there. So what are some of the things that when I'm working with an external design person, where I'm not the one who's responsible for collecting the information and doing the design, or maybe I am responsible for collecting the information, I don't know. Like what's the optimal way to work with an external party to get the designs that I need that don't result in 1 million revisions or 1 million change orders after the fact?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I think it's just like collecting the right data, like as we've been speaking. Obviously, smart level is like a huge benefit for us to be able to receive those vertical dimensions. I've been out in the field where I'm working with a sales manager. They're giving me the work order, right? You get that work order, you're looking at it and you're saying, okay, here's my material. This is what the blueprint or the design looks like. Can you go out there? And you're like, checking grades, and you're like, I'm like 26 inches below the threshold of the door. And I'm like, we're gonna need to build up an entire retaining wall there. I gotta go right to the homeowner. We have material changes, we have change orders, we have labor hours going up, and it's just not a really comfortable situation to be in. So I think it really does come back to, understanding when we do a design, we literally know every single material that goes into that design, from hardscape to lighting to the landscape, and how everything coincides with each other. But it's just super important to just get that accuracy up front. And that comes from understanding, hey, like, this is our pre-construction checklist. We just saw that you guys came out with the contractor support manual.
Yeah.
Genius, absolutely genius. I love that. We're going to probably, overlap some of that stuff, but we want to make sure that people are setting themselves up for success regarding if it's the front end. Design verification is another thing. If you guys out there have design build companies and you have project managers and designers, install this stuff into your company, and you're going to see a huge change from being efficient in the field and understanding, hey, we didn't just rush into a project like Johnathan was saying, how we're just trying to keep the funnel going, but it's super important to make sure that you're going and understanding all the stuff that happens before the project starts.
I think one of the things that I'm seeing a lot is there are a lot of new people in the industry, and a lot of people who are understanding the business opportunity, so they're really growing the business side of it, and they're really pushing on the marketing and the branding to create some strong demand, and then they're converting that into sales. But the translation of what I'm trying to sell, what the client wants, to the information I need to give to the designer, so the designer can provide an accurate design that is buildable with enough information for my field crew to be able to do it. There are a lot of gaps there. So you said one thing, which was like the pre-design checklist. What are if you had to give me, like, I don't know, the top, I don't know what the number is, 3, 5, 10 things. What are the most important things, and what's the most practical way to translate that information from one person to the next in your experience?
Yeah, and I think everybody can relate when you hear the word access. I think for me, that's the one thing that just goes up in my head. Understanding access. I mean, working out in the Seattle area, I'm back in Connecticut now, but working out there, every house was very tightly built, right? And you had these little fence sections about 4 to 5 feet to get to the backyard. So, shout out to Ditch Witch to be able to get us back there every time. But if we didn't have stuff like that, so to me, access is a huge one. Understanding the easements and setbacks, that's another one.
Okay.
If you're not coming into a project understanding where there's wetlands, there's easements, where are the setbacks on the property? Did you receive the plans from every homeowner that has building plans of their house? Did you take the time to actually study that stuff, so that when you're coming in, you're not installing a retaining wall on a easement or on a hill where you can't do it? Where's the pool set? Where's the shed set? Does that shed need a permit? So I think really looking at easements, setbacks, similar stuff like that is important for us as designers, because again, it can look very conceptual. You see this beautiful design. He goes out there, or whatever, you guys go out there and you look at the site and pull up those plans, and it just won't work. And now it causes a lot of frustration. You're going back to the drawing board, and you're completely changing up the budget. You're completely changing up material. So I just feel like, some of those things are what comes to my mind as far as making sure if I'm coming into a project, I feel confident that we did assess those things firsthand.
I think the confidence thing is the key thing, because I think that's probably one of the biggest hurdles to working with an external company for the design, because if I'm designing it, I went to the house, I saw it, I see the pitch, I can do it, but maybe design isn't my strength. Maybe I'm not that creative with what I can do, or I don't know how to use the software, and really it's not a strength of mine. So I'm trying to sub it out, but finding the right sub is one thing, and then working properly with that sub is another.
Yeah, and I think drainage is another one of those things. Just, as we speak, I'm thinking wow, drainage, to come into a project, realize that where's the water going? I think that's a super cool topic. And now that we're really all educating ourselves on permeable pavement and infiltration, and if you can't get that water to go through a clay soil, we'll get it into the exfiltration pipe and get it out, and where does that go? So, we've dealt with a lot of impervious surface projects where, we're over that 50% limit, and they're like, you can't install back here. I'm like, well, we just designed this entire project for them. You're telling me we can't install this beautiful project because it's over the impervious surface? And it's like that percent can actually, again, skew a big part. So drainage is a big one. I think people don't consider it as much as they should. And sometimes you can walk away from a project, and all of a sudden, a year later, somebody comes by and says, what's all this impervious surface doing? Well, no, it's permeable. Well, we were doing turf out there too, and artificial turf, it's considered a hard surface in this area. I'm like, it drains, it goes back through the open graded base. It's getting back into the soil where it belongs, and so to us, I mean, I think drainage would be another one of those parts.
And have you guys run into situations where, like what you just said, where it is, it works, but the city is not accepting that? Yes. And if yes, how have you attacked that?
Man, having lunch and learns with the people in these municipalities that lead the approval, a lot of times it's just a lack of awareness, right? And you think about the innovations that are going into the turf and the infills and things that are going into not just hardscapes, making things permeable. They're not in these shows. They're not at these events. So they stay really far behind, and they purely look at these books. Does it happen all the time? Not all the time, but when we get those moments, we say, hey, I understand you vetoed this. We would love just to sit down with you, have a quick lunch and learn with the rest of the group, and those actually help. We have somebody over in Seattle now where they're like, hey, I'm just signing this stuff off because they understand now. We just had to talk a little bit about flow rates and things like that through the turf. So a lot of it is not just saying, well, they denied it. How do we educate? And I think that that's the big thing is we realize looking up that design, if your head's down and all you focus on is design, you're not helping the industry, you're not helping the contractor, you're not helping the homeowner. And so you have to be able to have those uncomfortable discussions. And there was a moment actually last year when we talk about the handoff between what you sell, which is a beautiful vision, to execution. There was a moment where we did 3 different projects with 3 different contractors. One turned into a Sunday night, 9 p.m. before the crew was supposed to show up Monday morning. And we had to tell them there's going to be almost $20K in additional expenses because we didn't get things accurate. I saw another company in the same vein not only take on large projects, but these 300K projects had a 3 to 4% profit margin. So you're absolutely dying. Any one mistake, you're in the red. And then again, all within this kind of week and a half time, we also had another contractor who was putting up this massive retaining wall, messed up quite a bit on the elevations, and basically got into this fight match with the homeowner over who's going to eat the $60,000 for this. And not only did I see companies kind of fold and layoffs start to get out of control, I saw a company just like this basically say, I'm going to eat it. I didn't put those expectations in front. I didn't have the right equipment. He went straight back, closed his business within a month, closed it back, went back to the union. And that was really hard. It was a good friend of mine. And to see that he put about 12 years into something that literally was taken away from him within 30 days, we kind of stopped. We stopped for about 3-4 months at the end of this year. And we said, our information is only as accurate as it comes in. We partnered up with Smart Level. We said, hey, if we do have any partners that we will design for, and we tend to do more of the commercial work or really one-off stuff. We're doing like a winery right now with Aquascape and all these really cool things. But as we started to see all this happen, we said, we're willing to work and partner with people as long as the data that comes to our team is always systematic, accurate, and predictable. That's why we lean on Smart Level. It comes in. Now the accuracy sets us up to be able to have a much more accurate conversation on materials and billing and things like that. So we actually paused, really went deep into these partners all the way down to synced up and saying, all right, you're great. You're getting 300K projects. What is that actually doing for your company? Are you aware of where those costs are going? And so leaning into this, what it's done for a lot of these other contractors is now, again, you're speeding up the sales process. You're going to be as budget efficient as possible. And one thing that Dan does that I heard Paver Pete talk about is design with the product parameters in mind. That was we were doing a commercial project out in Florida, and we had this entire roadway of Techo block that we're pouring out there. And we had a chat with Paver Pete, and he goes, I might do this differently. Pave Tool was on that call. Yep. This would be so much more efficient. You would literally take off a whole row of cuts if you laid it out and designed things based on product parameters, and that kind of even changed us.
Yeah, now they get to mechanically lay the entire thing. It's going to speed up the efficiencies there. So yeah, it's just super important to go over that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's something that, again, just having worked with so many different companies over the years, that's something that I see either with novice designers that you bring in, either fresh out of school or from another industry. There's a lot of interior design people that have been getting into the outdoor spaces too, because they're seeing there's money there. Exactly. But without understanding what the products can and cannot do, it creates these headaches. And then it becomes really inefficient because you have a whole line of cuts along the entire patio where if it was like an inch wider, you wouldn't.
Yeah, just those little things, those little details matter. And we know that goes back to the numbers. We know that goes back to the hours in the field. And I think that back-end support that we get to now share and understand and go through the data. Hey, let's just sit, let's meet, let's digest everything that we just costed. Like, job costing is a huge thing, a part of the industry now. Yeah, it's not the most fun thing to do. I had to do it for quite a long time, and but to me it was exciting when you knew what material was spent, what labor hours were spent, where it went wrong. It was like it was almost like that. I don't know. It just kind of gave you that information to say, hey, take this data, bring it to the next estimate, and apply it. Now, whatever mistake that you learn from that, it increases the efficiency, it increases the profitability, and I think that's just so important. Yeah.
And if there's something I could build off of that, that's why it's so important to have the right pricing that allows you to collect enough gross profit to recover the overhead so that you can have people who are doing that once you get to a certain size, or that you have enough time that you can do that yourself. Because when you're not producing in the field, you're still costing your company money, either directly in what you're earning as a take-home pay or in terms of the opportunity cost. And I see it too often. We cut our margins so tight that you have to get on to the next job. You have to start it because you need the cash coming in to keep paying for stuff. So you don't stop and look at what went well and what didn't go well. And that's why I like what you said with like the constantly living in that state of postmortem. Like, you need to always be looking like, how can I do this better? What worked, what didn't work? Because otherwise you're constantly repeating the same mistakes and you're leaving money on the table all the time. And especially in an economy the way it is right now, you can't afford to do that. No. And if you want to grow your company, and we all should be, because the market is still a fraction of what it will be, and we may be in a recession right now, but that will not last forever. There will be another wave, maybe not the insane surge that we saw at the start of the decade, but there will be another surge. So if you're not doing the right things now, when that surge comes, you're not in a position to surf the wave. You're going to be chasing the wave instead of riding on top of it. So that's why a lot of the stuff that we were talking about today in the show and the stuff that you guys are talking about now is so important to do. And no, it's not the most fun thing until you make it fun. Yeah. So the learning it is not necessarily fun, but once you understand the numbers and you can look, we thought we were going to make 20% on this job. We made 12. Yep. The 8 is here, here, and here. Let's grab the guys and let's talk about where we messed this up. What do we need to change? Is it the materials? Is it the equipment? Is it the processes? Is it that we just don't know what the hell we're doing when it comes to installing this type of thing and we need to get training? What is it? And I think that's where the role of, I think you guys call it a support manager. I call it a project manager, but that kind of that in-between person is so key. What is that role really in your eyes? You guys call it a support manager. So what is that role?
Yeah, it's really just bridging the gap between design and build. That's very, open and vague. You can interpret that however you would like, but it's really just starting in the front end, moving through the project and understanding the hours and materials and the equipment that's involved, and then understanding and studying that data on the back end. And I think just for, just as a role, it's just supporting the contractor. Like, if we were in your company, like, we bolt onto the back so that you guys don't have to go out and hire 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 different employees that all come with different salaries and experiences where they're only focused on one thing. I mean, you mentioned that before, but it's just really understanding, like, I've been in the field, I've done the installs, and I think at a design level, it's just so exciting to be able to work with, a hardscape brand like TechoBlock and to innovate and to make sure that we're understanding that, the information that we receive up front is going to affect everything that goes through the project and beyond. And we like to scale in that way.
Yeah. And I would add to, this idea of hybrid roles. I think that sometimes when companies start to scale, they start to look at a dedicated person to run the lane of one thing. And that overhead, there's 7 of us. There's 6 of us in Seattle. He's out in Connecticut, all kind of full-time, everything from storytelling for our brands to website design to the actual design and build. And so for us, if you were to take any of those individual roles and bring them into a company to go up to your $5 to $10 million revenue range, there's at least 250 to 400K of overhead. Yeah. I've seen contractors bring that in the moment they're about 15 people to 20 people. And when you see that, just like what you were saying, Alex, is the output does not support that. And so the power of finding the right partner, the one who's actually down and there for you, who really wants to understand your process. In our designs, if we're designing for a builder, we got to understand how they price. Or else we just give them a design, and I've seen this as well, is you give a design, you're like, oh, this is 275K, and they're like, I told you my budget was 100. Big mismatches there that happen, and so I think finding somebody, for me, I'm in a role called sales enablement. Sales enablement is, look at it as revenue enablement. So if you think about all the things that are moving in a company, the role of sales enablement is to be able to fly at 3,000 feet and go back up at 30,000. Fly back down at 3,000, go back up. That's what I did alongside CEOs. So I was always kind of like second in command. And that role, I would really encourage, if anybody wants to bring a person on to support not just the sales, the marketing, and kind of the business management operationally, but somebody who can fly back and forth between those lanes, mega powerful. And so sales enablement, it's more in the tech space. But that's kind of my mentality that I brought into here, and I could see it paying dividends because you get to kind of run with the same mindset as a business owner, and I don't think a lot of roles do that.
Yeah, and I think in project management as the role itself, we wear many hats. I was a designer, a salesman, a project manager, a foreman, and I'm doing all these roles at once, and I'm like, is this what a project manager is in every company? But I've been through a couple companies where that role has changed. You kind of separate sales and you separate project management, but then that kind of creates some challenges. They're estimating it, they're selling it, and then they're passing it off. And it's like, there's no collaboration with that. So I've seen, companies where there's a lot of tension, a lot of drama, that the culture gets a little bit more chaotic. And I think culture is another huge thing that I've seen where, I want to build some cool stuff. Like I want to just go out and just love waking up and what do I do? That's why we do what we do, right? We're all passionate in what we do. So I just think, it comes back to just, understanding how culture works, understanding how an operations manager works with a project manager, the project manager works with the foreman, and it's a constant cycle of information, but controlling that information is super important, and making sure that all those systems do fall down to the right ladder where now these guys are putting it in the ground and it makes the most sense.
I think one of the things that, if we're talking about in-house and getting different teams to work together, one of the things that I've experienced, we did this at Tackle Block a few years ago. Like I said before we started this, I was in sales and then I went over to marketing. And the role that I play is kind of to be in between the two, because I lived both sides, so I understand both sides. But the thing that really helped, just putting someone in a hybrid role doesn't fix it. A person doesn't fix it, a title doesn't fix it, a set of roles and responsibilities doesn't fix it. What you need is to align on what their respective goals are. So for example, one of the things that we do is we have joint goals. So amongst departments, we'll have multiple teams that you have the same goal. So you figure out together, we got to go there. I don't care how you guys do it, but you guys figure out how you're going to work together so that we get there, because everybody has skin in the game. And I think that's one of the things that between sales and design and in the field, and that's where using things like processes and software specifically, where you can do the job costing analysis after, that's where you can say, well, the reason why we're not getting there, guys, is because the design doesn't make any sense. Or it's because Buddy doing the sales, he's over-promising on what we can actually do. Yeah. Or he's not leaving us enough margin, or he's letting the customer beat him up and we don't have enough profit left at the end. Or it's because we don't know what the hell we're doing and we messed up, or the saw was broken, or the skid steer was delayed by half a day and that threw us off. But if you don't have the ability, and this applies to any scale of company, if you don't have the ability to really take that step back and look at everything going on and what are all the contributors and get all the contributors in a room to discuss it, you're not going to be able to fix it. And that's one of the biggest changes that I'm seeing in this industry is the ability and the willingness of companies to open up. You don't need to open the books necessarily. I know a lot of companies are starting to do that, but at least open up the conversation to all the contributors, all the players. You know, when you have a sports team, the coach doesn't tell one player, this is what I need you to do. He tells the whole locker room, guys, this is what we need to do. And you specifically, you're important on this play. You got to get the ball and you got to get it to this guy. That means you got to run your route and these guys got to block for you.
Yep.
So everyone understands how they're contributing to the big picture. And ultimately, what I'm taking from this conversation is that is kind of what you guys end up doing for companies and help them get from where we are now to where we want to go, and this is the path, and we can kind of be that bridge in between. Is that fair?
Absolutely.
Yeah, you nailed it.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. It only took me half an hour to figure out what you guys do. All right, cool. This episode is brought to you by hardscaper.com. The Hardscaper mission is to empower industry professionals with the skills, inspiration, and confidence they need to take their businesses to new heights. Struggling with training programs for your team? Looking for helpful tips to build a better company? Subscribe today to gain access to hours of interactive on-demand hardscape construction and business courses for free. Check out hardscaper.com. Why don't we open it up to some questions? We don't usually get to take questions on the podcast because we don't usually have a live audience. So if you guys have any questions, it could be about construction, it could be about design, it could be about profits, it could be about pricing, it could be about project management, it could be about marketing, it could be about storytelling and building your brand. Anything you want, how do you do it so that it works smoothly and it doesn't become just a burden on everyone, basically?
What has maybe created hiccups versus what's really run smooth before. I would go right back to what you just said, which is this collective buy-in. Especially when you're starting to bring systems in and you're a smaller, tighter company, you can move very tight, you can move very quickly. What we did is we would create visuals, slide decks, we'd have team meetings. Even though I was in sales, we'd say, let's bring the builders in the room, let's bring operations, because the moment you feel too big and you're running siloed, that's where I actually saw things fall. I saw an owner say, here's a new system, everybody go on, sign up, do this, do that, this is how you're going to use it in the system. You quickly saw nobody bought into it. Money's going out the door because now you're paying for all these softwares. There wasn't alignment, there wasn't buy-in. That's the job of the owner, is to say, hey, on the field side, this is why it's really important to use this, not this is what we're going to use. This is why. And so when we go to the access, the best softwares that we have are the ones that the field people can see exactly how they relate to the sales funnel. When I go through the sales funnel, I don't just say, hey, here's the revenue coming. I say, here's some big things that are coming down the pipeline. Are we ready to brace for this? What do we need to situate on the build side? And so getting that collective buy-in, I would say, was major. It didn't really come down to what software was best. We flipped through Salesforce, Monday.com, Java, all high level. There's all these different systems. I think they're going to be very unique. The most important thing is if you're going to move into that level, you've got to get the buy-in first and foremost. Once people understand the value and how it actually impacts them, just like you said, now that I got a little skin in the game and I feel heard, the traction of that system.
Yeah, and I think the more that they can understand the why, to me, that's really what resonated with a foreman. Like, the foreman doesn't, he wants to build awesome stuff. He wants to be out there working 10 plus hours a day because he loves what he does and it does amazing work. But if they don't understand, why are you telling me to do this job in 200 hours? Or why are you telling me that I have to follow this? And what does that mean? How can you incentivize? We talk about gamification. Gamify it. If you can complete a job where it is a 6-figure job where you're over 1,000 hours, well, tell them, hey man, I know you could probably do it, but let's see if you can get that around 950, 900. Get them to kind of gamify it, and then that really gets them accelerated. It gets them excited to come to work every day, gets them excited to clock in. And what happens in their head is it starts to become that game where they know that little trip to the gas station and that gas station trip to the job site, they're starting to understand it. And I feel like if you can explain the why to those guys that are just, regardless of what position they're in, bring them all together. Just bring them together, make them round table that whole idea, and I think that goes far. And that could be tough to do. They might not want to hear it, but if they understand that why, I think it goes really far.
I think I think there's two very good perspectives there. I'm a big whiteboard guy at the office, so like I'll get everyone in and I'll start like mapping things out, and very quickly especially when you have a visual aid, like that's why slide decks or whatever. I do everything by hand. I'm old, I guess, but doing that, it becomes very clear. Like, okay, that's a problem. Okay, so let's park that for a second. I'm going to draw a red circle around it. Let's keep going, and then let's come back and let's hash this one out. And the other thing, the gamifying, when you play a team sport and you're playing just for fun versus when there's a scoreboard up, you know how the team rallies a lot differently when you're down by 1 and there's 30 seconds left on the clock versus when nobody knows what the score is, but you're about to get kicked off the field because the next team's coming in. It's the same thing. Everyone wants to win, but if you don't know how to win, and if I don't know what I need to do to win so that the team wins, I'm just going to do what I think is best. I'm going to do what's right for me. But when you make it about the team, and the team wins when we pull in 20% profit on the job, when the hours estimated are correct, when the materials estimated are correct, when everyone comes home every day safe, and they're able to go play softball with their kids or something because they didn't kill themselves because we have the right tools and we have the right equipment. When we're not arguing on site about what's the best way to build something because we've all been trained the same way, that's when you build a winning team, when things make sense. And the processes, they kind of take care of themselves. But I think the other thing about processes is they're never right the first time and they're never right the 10th time. But you got to start, and as you're going, again, being in that state of postmortem, like you gotta be like, does this process make sense? And whether it's on a monthly or quarterly or an annual basis, take a look at those processes and say like, hey guys, this process, does it still make sense? We all thought this was good, but after building 5 jobs, is it still good? Fuck no. Okay, all right, so what are we gonna change? Well, let's change this. And because they're part of that conversation, they buy in. And if they're not buying in on anything despite all of those efforts, well, then you have a people problem. You don't have a culture problem. You don't have a process problem. You have the wrong players. And that's why it's so important to have the right attitudes on people, and hiring for attitude and hiring for will over skill and experience. Skill and experience are valuable, don't get me wrong. But if you have to prioritize one over the other, it's the attitude and the willingness to be a team player and to grow and to learn over I know everything and just leave me alone, I got it. That, for me, is even more important to the integration of processes.
And being flexible, right? Being able to adapt and apply, and then adapt and apply. Because it's never going to stay the same. You're always going to have to just relearn and understand how to apply it. And I think it's a constant cycle, but it's that cycle that makes sure that you're still going up and you're not just plateauing. So it was a great question.
Okay, so the question was, how do you make your brand stand out? Because in your area, and no other area in the world, every market feels saturated, right? Because you're competing against the same 20, 30, 40, 50 companies. So how do you stand out in a way that that fits with your company too? Because you don't just want to stand out for the sake of standing out.
Right. Yeah, I would say that the real important thing is to focus on not what you're doing, but why you do it and why you're trusted. And in any market where you have saturation, the next thing that they look for beyond capabilities is the person. The sooner you can get that out, and you can see now, we've got some friends who are contractors, and the stuff that they put out are like, you're like, but this is how I'm gonna fix it. This is how I make sure I never replicate it again. It's this content going to a point away from, we were talking about this, a lot of things nowadays are pumping up production quality, not production value, the value behind it. They're trying to make things pretty. Well, this is how big I am. This is what I can do. If you look at our wall, Creative X Nature on there on Instagram, we've really gone away from any of our designed work. It's definitely capable. We can do it. It's what we do. Now it's a lot more of us speaking with people, learning about their stories, understanding their why. And I think that that's what people will gravitate to, especially as you scale your product offering. As you go from your 50K projects to 150K, that level of trust is only going to matter that much more. And so I say transitioning in that way, because in a saturated market, most of them are probably showing just what they do and why they're good. Honestly, a lot of people.
Yeah, a lot of
And the
before and
what to
afters.
do, what they do is a little difficult to differentiate for the average homeowner, right? You look at the top 10 guys in your market, their Instagrams probably all look pretty darn similar.
Yeah.
So
Well, it's like being the face too, right? Like I think for branding, it does come back to just being that face. I was just gonna say, like, before and afters are fantastic. Obviously, people love to just see that transition, but it's living in the challenges. It's living in, showing the team. Like, I think that's huge. Like, there's a lot of good guys out there in the industry that are just, very focused on themselves, and they're always speaking. Great, they have a great following, but show the team and how they operate. Show the team out in the field. Go up to I think RC Outdoor, Richard, he loves going up to his guys and just saying, hey, just doing that kind of stuff gets people engaged. It separates you from just the other companies in your area, and it actually creates this almost like this family feel, like where you go to another homeowner and it's that new homeowner and they're like, I know you, and they kind of feel a connection. I think that's a lot more valuable than just showing a project or a design. Start to show your face more, and I think that really will level you guys up beyond your competition.
I think, and Pete says this a lot, sales is the transfer of trust. So anything that you can do that is part of the brand that really helps people understand who you are as a company and who are the people in the company, like you just said, it makes me feel a little more familiar, so that I'm that much closer to trusting you than if it was just pictures of your work. Another thing I recommended earlier today, but there's this book called Branded, Not Blanded. It's by Dan Antonelli. I actually had him on the show a few months ago. He's not far from here. He's in New Jersey. He's got this creative agency called Kick Charge, and they do branding for home service companies. And I think it's worth reading because it's really about how do you tell the story of your company, and your company has a very unique story because you're a unique person, which sounds super cheesy and whatever, but it's true. Your approach to things and how you do things, there's a way that it can seem unique in the eyes of the consumer compared to everybody else, and ultimately that's what you're trying to do. And if you want to be high-end and you want to be professional and you want to be the clean-cut guy, well, that's one thing. And if you want to be high-end but a lot more loose and easygoing, well, that's another personality. And ultimately the key to any successful branding is it's positioning you in the market the way that you want to be perceived, so that your marketing is more effective. Because if you're spending money on marketing and you're running Facebook ads or print ads or whatever, and it's not clear why I would choose you and why you're the best option for me, most of that money is just throwing it out the window. So building a strong brand is so important, especially if you want to get into the higher end stuff. So it's a good question, but it's one that's so difficult to answer without asking 20 questions about you and your business. But I really recommend that book, and it's an easy read, and there's a ton of pictures in it too. So it's a quick read too. And he writes like a contractor. He's writing like the stuff that he's seeing, and things like what goes on your trucks and what goes on your trailers, and when you run ads, what goes on them. It's really worth reading just to open your mind up to what building a good brand really means.
And I think that's to piggyback off of storytelling. Your story is the one thing that I've learned that nobody can dispute. You come in with a story that everybody can dispute what you build and what you're doing and why you did it, but when you come in with a real story, that's going to be what connects people. So for me on the sales side, when I talk about design and why it's important, especially with the market, it's switching now and it's kind of getting tight again. We're now saying that for me, before I talk even about the benefits of the design, I go into my story. I was a homeowner. I had invested what I thought would be $50,000, ended up being an $80,000 project. I had no design. The guy was asking me, hey, I'm cutting the pavers now. Do you want to put some lights in? That'd be cool. And I'm like, all right, another $6,000, $7,000. All of these things happening. I had zero sight line of, I've never even heard of TechoBlock. I've never heard of any of these brands. Nobody showed me other than this thing that was on their phone. And I had 10 contractors standing in my living room. Like the whole thing, when I looked at it, was so backwards, and yet I nearly doubled my budget. And so when I tell people, and they're like, well, how much are the designs? Whatever that cost is that you want to associate, I always say that this is to prevent you from those scary contractor issues. I wish I would have paid $3, $4, $5, $6, whatever $1,000 to avoid $30,000 and me sleeping in the middle of the night and being like, what's another expense that's going to come up? Not only that, I ended up getting laid off in the tech industry about 3 months after I put 80 grand down in cash. The pain of that, I start there all the time. This is not a revenue source for design. This is a way for you to first see it, move all the parts, and because we understand the cost of those parts, get really, really smart with your budget. Okay, you have $1,000, how do we maximize that? How do we make sure that maybe your nice to haves do some different materials here, but your main key items that you really want, how do we invest in that versus just show you what we want to build? And so I would say going back to the brand is, there's probably a lot of great work that's on there. Find the people, get even some of the people that are uncomfortable on the team, and talk about your story. Talk about what does it mean to serve this area. Maybe you grew up in that area. Maybe you were just a click away. Maybe it was something that your parents kind of raised you around to see architecture and to see design in this way. I think those are the things that are going to really captivate people. And pour into your story, because nobody will ever be able to deny that. So it's going to be a big way to brand.
Cool. That help? Yeah. Brand's a tough one. It's a big, fuzzy,
it's a hot topic
thing.
right now, actually. It's a hot topic.
Any other questions? Yeah, go for it. I guess kind of like the lowest point where you're like, I don't know how the hell we're going to get out of this. And maybe it was that situation we were talking about where you had the 3 jobs at the same time and shit was going wrong on all 3 of them.
Yeah, and that's, for this industry, that's a good question. In this industry, something that I took from the technology industry is technology is very saturated. Software's popping up left and right. A lot of companies, it creates a ton of territorial, I'm looking at these people on and you're just trying to just crab in a bucket, right? You're just pushing each other down. One of the things that I saw in this industry is it's actually, there's so much green. There's so much green landscape out there. Like I don't even think we're close yet to the volume of people in this industry to make it competitive. And so one of the things, and I came from that point of view, is when I stepped in, I saw competition left and right. And so one of the things that I had to do is switch that to say, all right, who do I need to reach out to and build relationships with? We ended up really spending time partnering with the people that we looked up to all the time. Funny enough, not all of them are doing just as great as you see on social. And I think that social can be very much a distraction. There are a lot of companies that maybe put out certain energies, things that you could just kind of see like we're the best and all that. If it doesn't feed me, take them out. And what you will become are the people who are constantly pushing each other and in the industry. So now on our feed, who we have are a lot of our partners. We love each other. It's, if I help you, you're going to help me, scratch each other's back. And it's really changed not just how we enter a day, it's how we're changing how we get into this industry, and to say like, we're going to go so much farther if we're working with Techo, if we're working with Smart Level, if we're working with Synced Up. Let's go far together. Let's really push this. And so I would say that feeling of competition is sometimes you are in an environment that doesn't support your mindset. And the moment you say, let me flip these pieces out and bring people that inspire me, to me, that's what's gotten us out of these dark tunnels. So that distraction's the biggest thing, but consistency is also going to beat it.
Yeah, I think being able to pivot in any certain way to understand a different style, a different look, right? Like being able to constantly do that. You've seen TechoBlock evolve, their logo, their brand, everything. Same thing with your guys' companies. It's always going to keep evolving. And I think being able to pivot, understanding the moments when you have to do that. Like recently, we kind of got more into sustainable stuff, and it helped us close a big commercial project because we were able to storytell. We explained exactly how we're going to be sustainable, from the permeable pavement to rainwater harvesting to the solar to making sure when that water goes through, it's actually going into an irrigation system that pumps up to a live plant wall. And we won it, and it was just like such an exciting moment because we went right after sustainability. And when we went after that, it made that job and that project and the people that wanted to invest understand that they built that trust. And that was such a cool moment for us. It kind of helped us pivot as a company as well. And now there's all these new opportunities, right? These because we pivoted right there. So those opportunities are big.
Between the two of you, the big thing there is you can't be shy to ask for help. And I think, especially in the construction world, it's very difficult. It's a very, you especially when you start your own business, it's all on your back, it's all on your shoulders. You take everything on your own. And you want to be the hero in every situation because you have to be in the beginning. But as the company grows, if you're not able to share the burden with other people, and it sounds negative, but really there's an opportunity when you do that, and you open up and you discuss what the challenges are. Like if you want to integrate, I'll take the example of the sustainability thing. If you don't know anything about sustainability, well, guess what? There's companies like us that know about permeable pavement. There's companies like Atlantic Oasis that know about rainwater harvesting. You have the geotechnical fabric companies that can help you with the geogrids and fabrics that'll be appropriate for that. Like there are a lot of people that are willing to be out there to help you and that do want to help you and genuinely want to help you, not because they'll make $1 off of it. But if you don't open up and you don't have those conversations, you don't try to put yourself out there, that's when you don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. Or if you do see a light, do you think it's a train? Like you have to be able to ask the questions. And that's why I think events like what we put on here, where we bring over the 2 days 1,500 people together, that's the opportunity to shake hands with people and introduce yourselves and build a little network. Because that's where you can learn. And even if they don't end up serving your purpose directly, you can still exchange ideas, you can still learn from each other. And worst case scenario, it's someone you can call and you can bounce ideas off of. And even if you disagree with their ideas completely, at least that reinforces that your idea is the one you want to go with. But if you try to do it on your own, you're only going to get as far as you can on your own. As soon as you bring other people on board, well, you can go a lot further.
Yeah, we follow some guys out in the Kansas City area, and there's like 3 of them out there. And one's like good at outdoor kitchens, one's good at water features, and the other one's good at the hardscape. They all feed each other jobs. And it's like so new because you'd think they would be competitors, but they're not.
That's one of the biggest changes I've seen in the last 5 years.
Yeah, we're starting to see that more and more.
We're actually starting to work together instead of trying to kill each other.
Yep.
There's more. I say this a lot on the show, but my dad said this all the time when I was a kid. The sun shines for everyone. And in our business, there's so much work. There's more work than any of us could do in a year. So you just have to be willing to just accept that. You're not going to get all of them, but if you do the best that you can and you do the right things, you're going to get the ones that you deserve to get. And that should be more than enough. It's a mindset thing. It's really, that's all it is. It's I know it's not a tangible thing. I wish I could say like, here, take this, and there you go. But like, it's really, you gotta shift your mindset into one of abundance. The market is a big, vast place with a ton of opportunity. And just like I was talking with Stephen Lisk, I don't know if he's in here or if he's on the other side now, but like he specializes in drainage, and that's created a bunch of opportunities on the hardscape side because everyone who has a drainage problem needs a hole dug in their backyard. So while we're here, why don't we do that? So like that's one way of taking an opportunity and turning it into a whole business case. And if it's design, great. If it's kitchens, if it's pools, if it's living walls, if it's whatever, there is a way to heated pavements, turf. There's so many different opportunities that you just kind of have to sometimes take a step back, talk with some people about it, and then try again. Cool? All right, guys, I think we're going to wrap it up here. I'd love to keep going, but we do have to tear all this down and move on to the next city. So thank you very much for joining us. Thank you, guys. There's Steven. He's right there. As I say his name, he walks in the room. Thank you very much. And until next time, everyone, work hard, pave harder, and we'll see you next week on the Hardscape Growth Show, because this is a podcast. So if you listen to us on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, on YouTube, or wherever you listen to your podcast, check us out there. Give us a thumbs up, leave us a comment, and we'll see you next week. Thank you very much.
You've been listening to Hardscape Growth, a podcast for hungry professionals who want to grow their businesses and level up. Each episode is all about taking the next step in running your business, so make sure you never miss a show by subscribing on your favorite podcast player. And if you're finding this information to be useful, help others in your position discover us by giving us a star rating and leaving a comment. We'll see you next week.